Hey, good morning guys. It's a cold but beautiful day here in sunny Arizona. Nice blue sky out, but man, it is not very warm today, but that's all right. So it's a couple weeks after my Baja trip and I'm just here with the project SWM 500. I'm switching gears a little bit. So I got some friends coming down from Oregon. We're gonna do some sweet single track trail riding out here in the Arizona desert. I'm gonna be pulling the big gas tank off, switching back to the stock tank and shrouds, and just getting everything ready for normal trail riding, seeing as I'm not going to need the huge range of the 5-gallon tank. So let's get it taken apart.
1, 2, 3.
Okay, now I'm going to disconnect my fuel pump here. And a quick disconnect that I threw on the zip tie makes it super easy. Pull the tank off, which is awesome. There we go. Now I should be ready to lift it off. Okay, so I'm also checking into the fan. I told you guys in episode 6 that I had noticed that the fan wasn't coming on later in the Baja trip. So I was thinking that maybe it was just a broken wire. I've looked into that. Basically took the plug apart and tested these two wires with a 12-volt battery, and the fan runs just fine. So that's not the issue. What I'm gonna end up doing, I mean, it's cool that it comes with a fan, but you never really have any idea like when the fan's gonna come on. I don't know what the preset thermostat temperature is to kick the fan on. So what I'm gonna do is switch to this Tusk radiator fan thermostat. What's cool about it is a digital display, so it reads the engine temperature in real time, and that's awesome because I can basically take a look at the temp gauge and decide if it's getting too hot. Just kind of know what's going on with the bike. Also, using this button here, you can set the temperature that the fan comes on at, so you have full control if you want to have the fan come on earlier or later, have it come on sooner. You just touch the button here and change that. So right now it doesn't read anything because it's not connected to the fan and the battery, but this will read in real time what the temperature is, and then like I said, I can adjust the fan to have it come on when I want to. Other cool thing about this is you don't have to splice into the radiator hose. It comes with a probe that just fits into the radiator fins, and that's how it's able to read the temperature. So cool upgrade there. I'm gonna go ahead and install this. Okay, so looking at the Tusk digital radiator thermostat a little closer, the plugs are all gonna be different than what's stock on the SWM. I mean, that's to be expected. This is a replacement thermostat for one of their fan kits, so all of these plugs match their fans. Now, I'm not super worried about that. I've got a whole assortment of these different plugs, so I'm gonna be clipping and changing a couple things so that everything works nice with the SWM fan. Now, I can go ahead and use the stock fan just because it's a 12-volt fan. I'll just change this plug here. The other thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave room on one of these plugs to run a fan on the other side. So as you guys can see over here, there's room on this radiator for a fan as well. I could mount it right here. So I'm not gonna do that right now just because I'm gonna be running the small tank, and the small tank lets so much more air flow through the radiators. But before my next adventure where I throw the 5-gallon Safari tank on, I am gonna be putting another radiator here. So I'm gonna keep that in mind today as I'm building this wiring harness. I'm essentially gonna have 2 plugs here so I can just plug and play a second fan at my leisure. Okay, so to do all this, basically I'm looking at the thermostat wiring harness. Here's the piece that goes over to the battery. So I've got the positive and negative terminal for the battery. I've got the fuse in here basically to protect the fan if something shorts. So this is what that plug looks like. That corresponds to what the plug looks like on the thermostat kit. So that'll be plug and play. What I'm gonna do, this black and white wire is essentially what's going to the fan. Black is ground and white is hot. So what I'm gonna do is cut this guy off, and I've got this kit. I just got this off of Amazon, pretty cool deal here. So it's basically build your own wiring harness kit. and I'm gonna just use one of the 4 terminal plugs instead of the 2 terminal plugs, and that's gonna let me add a second fan whenever I want. I can basically just, I'm gonna leave a spot here for the positive and negative wire from the other fan, be able to plug that in, and I can just add those at a later date. So that'll be pretty cool. I'm gonna throw that in so I can have that other fan when I want to. Okay, so I've gone ahead and crimped on the individual terminals on each wire here, so I just need to make sure that when I put them in the plug, I line them up in the correct orientation. So, like I said earlier, black is the ground on the thermostat wiring harness and white is the hot wire. So I'm gonna hook black to black and white to red. Okay, so now I'm gonna find a good place to mount the thermostat. So I'm here on the left side of the bike. You can see this a noise emissions control sticker. So I think I'm gonna stick it right over that. Like I said, left side of the bike here. I think if I put it right here, that's gonna be nice because I'll be able to just look down when I'm on the bike and read quickly what the temperature is. And then also if I can check here and I'm not going to have any clearance issues with the fork or the triple clamp hitting the thermostat. So plenty of clearance there. So that'll be awesome. So I'll clean this off real good. I'm going to leave the sticker on there, but I'll just clean it off. And then I'm going to use this 3M double-sided tape. This is real similar to the adhesive that comes on the GoPro mounts. So if you guys have had GoPros in the past, you know how sticky this stuff is. You can pick this up at any auto parts store. I got this at O'Reilly, and I'll just clean off the back of the thermostat here, put a couple rows of this tape along, and then it'll stick right on there. And I'll feed the wires back behind the radiator here and get them over where I need to get them. Okay, so I finished the install on the digital thermostat kit for the fan. You can see I got it all wired up in here. I've installed the thermostat probe here. Like I said earlier, there's no cutting into the coolant line. You just have this probe here that sticks into the fins. I've thrown a zip tie on here to secure it, to keep it from falling out, and then just wired everything in. On the left side of the bike, I've got the thermostat attached. So as you can see, it's a balmy 81.3 degrees right now, pretty nice out. If I push the button once quickly, it shows that it's set to come on at 191 degrees. I'm gonna press and hold it to get into the setup mode. And now when I push the button, I can adjust the temperature. So to test it, seeing as it's 81 degrees outside, I'm gonna set it at like, here, 43 is fine. Let it sit for a second. Now if I hooked it all up right, the fan will come on. There we go. So this right here means the fan is running. Come on over. So pretty cool. So I'll come back over here now, reset this again. Press and hold it, get into the setup menu, and I'm gonna go ahead and set it back to 190. So I think 190 is pretty good. If you guys have some other suggestions, please go ahead and leave it in the comments section of the video. I think 190 will work here fine for us. So once that finishes flashing and saves, there we go, fan turned off. Other cool thing about this, I don't know if you guys saw when I was going through the numbers here, but if I was worried about my battery going dead, okay, because now this is hooked directly to the battery, so this is gonna run when the key is off. And if I'm worried about draining the battery, I can hit this button. I'm sure you guys saw it as I was scrolling through. I could set this thing at something crazy like 400 degrees. So if I was really worried about draining the battery, I could always turn this up to some crazy number to basically keep it from coming on. Inversely, if I wanted to test to make sure the fan is working, I could always set this at some crazy low number like I just did, 43 degrees, and make sure that the fan is operating properly. So cool mod there. I think it's gonna work really well. Big improvement over stock. Okay, so the other thing I'm gonna try to help with my overheating issue is I've swapped out the radiator cap. I've thrown on a CV4 2.0 bar cap. Now, the stock one is 1.4. See, it says 1.4 right here. This is a 2.0. So basically, it has to get hotter and there has to be more pressure inside the radiator before the spring will compress and it'll let the coolant come out. Because the important thing is keeping the coolant in the bike. I mean, it can't do its job if it's already squirted out all over the ground or gone into the catch tank or whatever. So what I want to do with this higher pressure radiator cap is essentially keep the coolant in the radiator longer. So you guys know this is Japanese bike. So Suzuki, Honda, any of that stuff fits perfectly on the SWM radiator. Also, just for reference, like a Honda, a Kawasaki, they come with 1.1 bar. SWM stock is 1.4. KTM Huskies 1.8. So we've thrown a 2.0 on there. So that should be a pretty killer upgrade. Okay, so I didn't actually video the swap for the fuel pump. It was super straightforward. Basically just unbolt the 6 bolts, pull it out of the Safari tank and bolt it back into the stock tank. So one little issue I had was on the Safari tank, the fuel pump sits essentially right here, right in this area. And so the fuel line's able to come down and go right to the fuel pump, where on the stock tank, it's clear back up under here. And I didn't really account for this. I didn't realize it before. So I had actually, when I put the zip tie filter in, I had cut the stock fuel line like a little bit too short. So when I went to put the stock tank back on in the stock location, the piece was too short, and I actually had to go ahead and add like a longer piece of fuel line. So this is all I had with me. I'm of course gonna swap that out as soon as I get back from this trip with basically like some actual fuel injection line. But I did want to point that out, that if you were running the Safari tank and the stock tank and you want to be able to swap back and forth between the two, it's really easy to do that. It's really easy to swap the pump, but just make sure that you leave the fuel line long enough coming from basically the throttle body around to your fuel filter to be able to route this way for the stock tank and this way for the Safari tank. All right, so I talked in episode 6 about this twin air fuel sock, how happy I was with it, and I showed you guys how much crap was actually stuck in the fuel sock. So I wanted to put one in the stock tank as well. It's a different neck size than the Safari tank, so the fuel sock I had couldn't work. So I want to let you guys know it's the KX250F, KX450 is the same size that fits in here. They only make one. I think the year is like 09 to 11, but it doesn't matter. It's the only KX one, and it's the right diameter to fit properly inside the fuel neck. So we got that guy in there. That's all you have to do to install it. So other tip, if you guys damage the stock fuel cap and want to replace it, the Achereby's large gas cap is the same size and thread pitch as stock. So you can grab these. They're usually about $10 and it screws right on. Okay, as you guys can see, I did swap out the big tank and put the stock one back on. So now I've got the plastic shrouds again, the stock plastic and the stock seat. So threw that on. And yeah, as you guys can see, I never really realized how big that gas tank was before. I mean, yeah, 5 gallons, but you could see it's like a whole new world in here. You can actually see the motor now. So I think this is actually going to be the biggest thing to help with my cooling issues, is the fact that now you can actually see the radiators and the air is able to blow through there. So that's going to be a huge improvement. I am going to switch coolants. So before I was running engine ice, and now I'm going to try this Maxima Coolant. And the reason I'm going to do that is engine ice had a boil over point of 256 degrees, and as you guys can see here, it might be a little fuzzy, sorry about that, but the boil over point of this stuff is 288, so that's another 32 degrees, which I think is quite a bit, and I feel like any little bit will help. So I'm going to go ahead and flush the coolant out, drain the old stuff, and pour this in. Alright, let's go ahead and get what's left of the old coolant out, and we'll get ready to pour the new stuff in. Yeah, I'm sure if you guys can see it on the video here, but not a lot of engine ice left. Looks like I boiled most of it out, and it's basically just the water that I poured in out of my pack. That's why I'm figuring this out for you guys, so that I can go through it, show you what you need to do, and that way your bike is always running as well as possible. Okay, pro tip for you guys, if you use a screwdriver and just poke a couple holes in the foil seal on the coolant bottle, you can pour it in pretty easily without a funnel. So check this out. Let's pour the new stuff in here. Okay, so I can see it there. See, I don't know if you guys can see it there, but it's basically just inside the top of the fins. So what I'm gonna do now, and again, this is a good thing to do on all bikes, not just SWM, but I got the bike up here on the stand like so, and I'm gonna basically take it and lean it sideways on the stand away from the radiator cap. So I'm leaning it opposite the radiator cap, and that's gonna let the coolant basically burp over to the other side, make sure the other side's all the way full, and then I'll be able to add more on this side. Yeah, as you guys can see, that went down quite a bit. It's not even up to the level of the fins, so that's why it's so important to tip the bike over like that. That fills the other side of the other radiator with coolant, and then I can add a little bit more, make sure I'm full all the way. There we go, looking pretty full there. Go ahead and throw the cap back on. Alright, the other thing I decided to do was take the stock louvers. So like I said, in Baja, I took the louvers off because I wanted to get maximum airflow through the radiator, and I wasn't super worried about sticks and bushes and rocks coming up just because of the big tank. But now that I've thrown the stock tank back on, I'm going to be throwing these louvers back on, and so I'm going to modify them a little bit. Basically, I'm going to take this old drill, which is way too big, way too much drill for the job, but I'm sure it'll get it done, and just drill some vent holes in here to let a little more airflow in. Quiet all these voices. So the drill bit size that I'm using here, just for reference, is a 3/16, and you guys can always go up and down a little bit if you feel the need. Basically, the bigger the hole, the more air you'll let in, but also the bigger chance you have of letting sticks or stones or mud get through. So I went with a 3/16, and I think that's gonna do the job for me. And there's something about you naked in the noontime, doing a little jig around the house. Okay, so now I'm going to take this razor blade. You can see basically all the little leftover pieces of plastic that need to come off. So I'm going to take this razor blade in the scraper, just scrape along and break loose all the plastic. Alright, let's stick these guys back on. Real easy, they just essentially press into place, snap into place like that, and there we go. So back in there, have a little bit more airflow than they did before. All right, guys, so that's it for episode 7. I'm gonna go ahead and get the bike put the rest of the way back together here, and I'll catch up with you guys in episode 8 when we're doing some cool riding in the Arizona desert. Check in soon. Thanks.
Oh, there's something about you naked in the nighttime.